We are back on Inside Politics. Our guest today, Dr. Thomas Schwartz from Vanderbilt University. We're focusing on foreign affairs today. Dr. Schwartz, a couple more questions about China. To perhaps complicate the matter in Hong Kong, President Trump has now said he wants to sort of tie a humanitarian resolution of what's going on in Hong Kong with also working out the trade deal. Doesn't that sort of complicate both those issues?
Complicates both. Interestingly enough, I mean, I think you could see it more positively in the sense that at least President Trump in this case, President Trump has not been particularly outspoken on issues of democracy and human rights in other countries. He's, as you know, with Putin and others, he's tended to, and with the North Koreans, he's tended to say those are their own issues. So in a way, by connecting this to the trade war, it could, if it backfires, it could be terrible. But on the other hand, it also indicates to China that we take how they treat Hong Kong seriously.
Further complicating it, the U.S. seems to be finalizing a deal with the Taiwan government, the nationalist Chinese, for sale of some pretty high-level aircraft. That the Chinese are not going to be happy about that.
They're not going to be happy about that. I mean, this is part, you might say there's a parallel here between the sort of full pressure on China with tariffs, the Hong Kong, the Taiwan, and the full pressure on Iran. These are all gambles. They could work out, and they could also blow up terribly in the president's face.
The other thing that's going on over there with China that I think continues to be a problem is just what else they're going to do to deal with all these things at once, particularly the trade thing. They've got so much going on the plate to have to deal with that all at one time.
Absolutely, and this is I think part of the administration. To the extent that they have a strategy, it is this idea of pressing the Chinese on a whole series of fronts.
The Canadian government recently criticized the Chinese government about what's going on in Hong Kong, and the Chinese jump back at them.
Yes.
When the president has criticized China, they don't jump back. Why?
Well, I think that's relative power, and it's also probably with this notion that there are other things on the agenda. The Chinese are sensitive on that, and they may come back hard at some point, but they may be holding their fire for other good reasons as well. Let's
turn to the Middle East. There's going to be an election in Israel pretty soon. The president has been one of the great supporters of Netanyahu. He may not come back. Does that change the equation in Israel if they have to change leaderships?
It will really have an interesting effect on U.S. relations. So the president is so tied to Netanyahu that a change in leaders, even though I think the fundamentals of the U.S.-Israeli relationship are very, very strong. We have a lot of intelligence sharing. We have a lot of cooperation on all sorts of levels. I think it might take some of the fire out of the president's political comments about Jewish Americans and others supporting it. Netanyahu has been there for a long time. His departure from the scene would have, I think, some consequences.
The president even got Netanyahu to reconsider and not admit two U.S. congressmen to go to Israel. That's pretty unprecedented.
That was unprecedented and disturbing in a lot of ways. I think this is the type of thing that one would not think the president should really intervene in at all, given the nature of the congressional visit.
The highly touted but never quite fully seen Middle East peace plan being put together by the president's son-in-law has not yet been unveiled. Is it about to be unveiled? Does it have a chance at all to be seriously considered in the Middle East?
The basis of the Middle East peace plan is the notion of economic development in the Palestinian areas as a way of overcoming the degree of difference between the two communities. Ultimately, I think this is something that if the president's reelected, you may see something actually unveiled, but I don't think you're going to see much before the election.
One story that doesn't seem to get a lot of press in the United States but has some pretty ominous things coming out is what's going on between India and Pakistan. They're fighting again over the Kashmir province. The most recent thing I saw, the Pakistani prime minister said there's no sense in talking to India. These are two nuclear powers. They've been at the brink of nuclear war before. How close are we now to this? And who's going to work this out?
As you probably remember, Pat, that the president actually offered to mediate in Kashmir, but the Indian government doesn't want anything to do with it. This is one of those disputes that has the potential to be inflamed. India is handling it in a fairly heavy-handed manner by restricting all sorts of media access to Kashmir.
And they have a much more right-wing government than India.
They have a much more nationalist and right-wing government than they've had in the past, and it's determined, it seems, to really solve Kashmir in a way. They may be taking their cue from what the United States has supported with Israel, that basically the idea is these disputes no longer are ones that should be mediated internationally and should be solved by the nations at the point.
As we begin to close, North Korea comes in and out of the news. Most recently, they've been occasionally, every time they're not happy with anything that happens in South Korea, they fire off missiles again. Are we really making any progress here other than these beautiful letters that apparently the North Korean president keeps sending President Trump?
This is one that's hard to say, because in some ways the North Koreans may be really suffering from the sanctions. There may be actual progress happening that we're not seeing, that the North Korean economy is not doing very well and the rest. It's hard to say. The real problem in that part of the world is actually what's going on between South Korea and Japan, and the fracturing of that alliance, and the United States' unwillingness really to do anything there is probably as serious as what's going on in North Korea.
As we close, you're about to finish up a book on Henry Kissinger, and probably one of the architects of dealing with Cold War politics. We're going into a whole new period of politics now. We're past not even the post-Cold War.
Yes. Yeah. No. The Kissinger era was primarily, overwhelmingly concerned with the Cold War. So that Kissinger, for example, saw the rise of China and the entry of China as a way of balancing the Soviet Union. Now we have a completely different situation.
We'll look forward to having you come back when that book's done.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you as well for being with us on Inside Politics. Hope you're back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, go to the News Channel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. There's new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.